Have you ever met someone who genuinely prefers their own company? Not because they're sad or lonely, but because solitude feels like home. They don't need Friday night plans to feel alive. They don't scroll through their phone looking for someone to text. They're just there, alone, and completely at peace. Meanwhile, others can't stand even an hour by themselves. Silence feels suffocating. An empty room feels like punishment. So what separates these two worlds? Why do some people crave solitude while others run from it? Let's go deeper, because the psychology behind this reveals something profound about human nature, identity, and what it really means to be whole. See, solitude has been misunderstood for centuries. Society treats it like a red flag, a warning sign of isolation or depression. But that's not the full picture, because there's a massive difference between loneliness and chosen solitude. Loneliness is painful. It's the ache of wanting connection but not having it. Solitude, on the other hand, is intentional. It's the conscious choice to be alone because that's where you feel most yourself. Psychologists have studied this extensively, and what they've found is fascinating. People who enjoy spending time alone often have something called high autonomy orientation. It means their sense of self isn't dependent on external validation or constant social interaction. They don't need others to tell them who they are. They already know. And that's rare, because most of us have been conditioned since childhood to believe that being alone means something is wrong. But for some people, being alone means everything is finally right. 1. The quiet mind. For many people who love solitude, it's not about avoiding others, it's about protecting their mental space. Think about it. The world is loud. Conversations demand energy. Social situations require masks, performance, careful navigation of emotions and expectations. And for some minds, that's exhausting. Not because they're weak or antisocial, but because they're highly sensitive to stimulation. Psychologists call this sensory processing sensitivity. It's when your nervous system processes information more deeply than others. You notice subtleties, emotional undercurrents, the energy in the room. And while that's a gift, it's also draining. So solitude becomes a sanctuary, a place where they don't have to filter, perform, or manage anyone else's emotions. They can just exist. And in that quiet space, their mind finally settles. It's not loneliness, it's relief. 2. The creative recharge. Here's something most people don't realize. Many of history's greatest thinkers, artists, and creators were fiercely protective of their alone time. Einstein, Nikola Tesla, Emily Dickinson, Virginia Woolf. They didn't avoid people because they hated humanity. They sought solitude because that's where their creativity lived. Psychologists have found a strong link between solitude and creative thinking. When you're alone, your brain shifts into a different mode. There's no social pressure to conform, no need to explain your thoughts, no interruptions. Your mind wanders freely, and in that wandering, ideas emerge. Connections form. Insights surface that would never appear in the noise of conversation. For people who thrive in solitude, being alone isn't emptiness. It's where their inner world comes alive. They're not lonely. They're building something invisible, something deeply personal, something that can only exist in silence. 3. The comfort of self-sufficiency. Then there's another group. People who enjoy being alone because they've learned how to be their own best company. This isn't about arrogance or isolation, it's about emotional independence. They don't need someone else to make a moment meaningful. They can go to a restaurant alone and enjoy the meal. They can watch a sunset without needing to share it. They can spend an entire weekend without speaking to anyone and feel completely fulfilled. Psychologists link this to something called secure attachment. It's when you've developed a stable sense of self that doesn't collapse in the absence of others. You're not running from connection. You're just not dependent on it for your sense of worth. And that's powerful. Because in a world that constantly tells us we need to be surrounded by people to be happy, these individuals have discovered something revolutionary. You can be whole all by yourself. 4. The escape from performance. But let's talk about something deeper. For many people who enjoy solitude, being alone aren't just seeking peace. They're protecting something fragile, their sense of self, because they've noticed something unsettling. When they spend too much time around others, they start changing. They absorb other people's moods, opinions, energy. They begin thinking in someone else's voice. They lose clarity. Psychologists call this emotional contagion, the tendency to unconsciously mimic the emotions and behaviors of those around you. And for some people, that feels like a threat, not to their happiness, but to their identity. So they retreat, not because they hate people, but because they need to reclaim themselves. Solitude becomes a form of self-preservation, a way to remember who they are when no one else is shaping the narrative. 6. The introvert sanctuary. Of course, we have to talk about introversion, because while not all people who love solitude are introverts, there's a strong overlap. Introverts don't hate people, they just recharge differently. While extroverts gain energy from social interaction, introverts lose it. Every conversation, every social event, every group setting drains their battery, and solitude is how they recharge. It's not about being antisocial, it's about respecting their own nervous system. Psychologists have found that introverts have higher baseline levels of cortical arousal. That means their brains are already more stimulated at rest. So adding social interaction on top of that can feel overwhelming. Solitude isn't avoidance, it's balance. It's how they regulate their internal world so they can show up fully when they do engage. And that's something extroverts often misunderstand. Silence isn't sad. For introverts, it's oxygen. 7. The fear of superficial connection. Then there's people who prefer solitude because they've grown tired of shallow relationships. They've sat through countless conversations that felt empty, small talk that went nowhere, friendships that looked good on the surface but lacked depth. And at some point, they realized something. Being alone feels better than being surrounded by people who don't truly see you. Psychologists call this relational depth seeking. It's when someone values quality over quantity in relationships. They'd rather have one meaningful conversation than 10 surface-level interactions. And when they can't find that depth, they choose solitude. Because at least in solitude, there's honesty. There's no pretending, no wasted energy on connections that don't nourish the soul. For them, being alone isn't lonely, it's peaceful. Because peace is better than pretending. 8. The spiritual dimension. But here's where it gets even deeper. For some people, solitude isn't just preference, it's spiritual practice. Throughout history, mystics, monks, and philosophers have sought isolation not to escape the world, but to understand it more deeply. They knew something modern culture has forgotten, that in silence, you hear things you can't hear in noise. Your intuition, your inner wisdom, the quiet voice that gets drowned out by constant distraction. Psychologists studying mindfulness and meditation have found that solitude increases self-awareness, emotional regulation, and mental clarity. When you spend time alone without distraction, you're forced to confront yourself, your fears, your patterns, your truth. And while that can be uncomfortable, it's also transformative. Because you can't grow if you're always running from yourself. For people who embrace solitude, being alone isn't emptiness. It's where their inner world are meet. 9. The misunderstood loner. But let's acknowledge something painful. People who enjoy being alone are often misunderstood. Others assume they're sad, broken, or antisocial. Friends take it personally when they decline invitations. Family worries they're depressed. Society labels them as weird or disconnected. But here's the truth. Just because someone doesn't need constant company doesn't mean they're struggling. It means they've found something rare, contentment within themselves. And that's threatening to a culture built on the idea that happiness comes from external sources. Because if you're happy alone, you don't need what society is selling. You don't need endless entertainment, social validation, or the approval of others. You found peace in the one place most people are terrified to look: inside. 10. The balance. So where does this leave us? Is solitude the answer? Not entirely. Because while alone time is essential for some, complete isolation isn't healthy for anyone. Humans are wired for connection. Even the most solitary people need relationships, just in smaller doses and deeper forms. The key is balance. Knowing when you need to retreat and when you need to engage. Understanding that choosing solitude doesn't make you broken, and needing people doesn't make you weak. Both are valid. Both are human. The healthiest people are those who can move fluidly between solitude and connection, knowing when each is needed. They don't run from themselves, and they don't run from others. They simply know how to be whole in both spaces. So if you're someone who loves spending time alone, know this: you're not weird. You're not broken. You're not missing out. You've just discovered something beautiful. That solitude isn't loneliness. It's freedom. And maybe, just maybe, in a world obsessed with noise, your quiet existence is exactly what's needed. Not as an escape, but as a reminder that sometimes the most profound connections we make aren't with others. They're with ourselves. And that's not sad. That's sacred.